Long ago in China, there was a family that had a father and 2 sons, and their wives, all living in one farm. The 2 daughters-in-law, after spending many months with their new family, wanted to go back and visit their parents. But when they asked their father-in-law, he always said no. They weren't quite sure why this was, but after asking over and over again, finally the father-in-law was tired of it. He said, "Okay, I'll let you go under one condition. If you go, you must bring me back what I ask for, otherwise you can't return." The young women, they said, of course, whatever you want, dear father." They figured he would ask for something easy, like perhaps a piece of silk or maybe a special food. But he told the girls, "When you return, you must bring me fire in paper and wind in paper. If you can't bring that, don't bother coming back." The 2 girls, they were so excited, they set off right away. It wasn't long before one of them broke the strap on her sandal, and as they sat down on the road to fix the sandal strap, what they had promised suddenly came to mind. How are we ever going to get our things that our father has asked for? We don't even know what fire and paper is or what wind and paper is. And as they began thinking they could never go back to their husbands again. As the 2 sat there, dejected, a woman came riding by on a water buffalo, a very young woman. And she saw them, and even though they were wearing fine clothes, she saw the frowns on their faces and said, "May I help?" And they said, No, no one can help us. Our father-in-law, he asked us to bring him fire and paper and wind and paper, and we have no idea what to do. And if we can't find these things, we can't return back home again." "Ah, I see," said the young woman. "Leave it up to me. I think I can help. Go on about your way, and when you pass this way again, stop at the farm at the bottom of the hill. I'll be there, and I'll have your answers." And so those young women, they went back to their home village, and they spent a whole week with their family. And as the week ended, they began traveling back to their new home, and stopped at the farm and asked for the young woman they had met, and sure enough, there she was. As they walked into this very poor-looking farmhouse, they saw the young woman. And there she was holding in one hand a paper lantern with a candle inside. She said, This is fire and paper. You can see the candle burns, but the paper doesn't." And then she reached down and took a piece of paper off the table and folded it carefully to make a fan. And she waved it back and forth. "This is wind in paper." The 2 young women smiled and thanked the young woman from the farmhouse. "Can you at least tell us your name?" "Ah, my name is Li Chin. If you ever need to find me again, this is where I live with my family." The 2 women went back and gave the fire and paper and wind and paper to their father-in-law, and he was very impressed. He said, "How did you find this out?" And they told her all about Li Chin. And he thought to himself, if there's a woman that wise, perhaps she would make a great partner for my young son. And he sent a matchmaker over, as was the custom in those days, and the 2 met. And after a time, they fell in love, and the marriage was arranged. Now that this young woman, Li Chin, was a member of his family, he told all the other family members, because of her wisdom and cleverness, from now on, she is the head of our family. This was a very young head of the household for any city in China, for any countryside either. But that was what the father said, so that's what they did. And Li Chin told all the men in the family, her husband and her brothers-in-law, "You shall never go out to your field nor come back with empty hands." And so the men, they went to work, and before they went out to the field, they would gather up some manure to carry it out to the fields to fertilize them so they grow well. And when they were done working for the day, they'd bring back firewood. And when they had enough firewood, they brought back stones to the farming complex right there. And soon they had a great pile of stones for building and a great pile of wood for their fires. And with all that fertilizer in the fields, their fields prospered. And soon, they could use those stones to build an even bigger house for themselves because they'd done so well. And this house, well, they built it and they put over the gateway the words, "No sorrow." One day a mandarin, a city official, was riding by on a sedan chair, kind of a big comfy chair that's carried by 4 servants, one on each corner. And as he saw the words "No sorrow" on the gate, he stopped his servants right there, had them set down the chair, and he stood up and walked to the gate and pounded on the door. When Li Qin opened the door, she said, "Hello, Mandarin," and she bowed respectfully. "Your family has the words 'No sorrow' across the door. That's an impudence. Everyone has sorrow in their lives. Saying that is an affront to the gods themselves. You must take it down immediately." Li Qin looked at the Mandarin and said, "Great Mandarin, I respect your counsel, but that is an invitation. You see, our family has done well and prospered, and so we are asking people when they come here to leave their sorrows at the door and come in and enjoy the peace and happiness we have in our home. But if you have sorrows, of course, we are happy to help resolve them." "That's still impudence," said the Mandarin. "I should fine you a piece of silk as long as this road for your impudence." The young woman smiled and she said, "Of course, Mandarin, just tell me exactly the length of this road from where it starts to all the place where it ends, and I'll be happy to make the silk." Well, you should, well, if you think you're so smart, I shall fine you again a measure of soybean oil, as much as in the China Sea. Well, if you could measure the volume of the China Sea, Mandarin, I'd be happy to press my soybeans and give you the oil. And the Mandarin, he shook his head. This woman was clearly much more clever than he was, and he was a city official. But then he got an idea. He said, "Well, clearly you are a wise person. So, from now on, when anyone ever has an argument in the countryside all around, you shall be the one that will judge the problem and solve it for them. For I am making you a judge in this district." So not only was Li Qin the very youngest head of a household, but she was also the youngest judge and the only one that was a woman. But whenever people came to her, they always left with a smile on their face. She was that good at solving problems. And that's the end of the story.